All right, here we go. Now it's time for another Yat Chat. I'm Bob Walker. We are live on Facebook, and today our guest is Ernie Phillips, a record promotion executive for many, many years, and he was a good friend of Mac Davis and many other people. And of course, we lost Mac Davis yesterday, but Ernie is going to, give us a little memory or three about Mac Davis. How you doing, Ernie?
Man, I'm doing good. Do we have to do any of that social distancing and all that? If so, we're gonna talk records. I can put this on.
No, but it would
If we,
help if you
if
get a
we
little
don't,
closer. Get a little closer to your camera so you can get more audio.
if we're just gonna be sitting there, shooting the bull, I can put
No, you don't need a mask. No
my
mask.
blah one, or if we're gonna get political, I can put this one on. So I'm ready. I'm ready for you.
You're ready. Okay. So welcome. Good to see you again. And
Same
you
here.
you spent many years on the trail with record promotion. And man, the contacts you made and the friends you made and the things you saw and heard. Wow.
We can't talk about.
Well, we're going to look at the ones you can talk about today. But you were a friend of Mac Davis, and just to give the watchers, the viewers, a little background on Mac Davis's record career, he started out in 1971 on Columbia Records with a song called "I Believe in Music." And then in 1972, the following year, he had his big hit that Ernie will be telling us a bit about called Baby Don't Get Hooked on Me. And then he went on in 1974. He did Stop and Smell the Roses. And also that year, he did One Hell of a Woman. 1980, boy, what a great song this was, huh? Oh, Lord, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way. Love that song. And he went on to other things like Texas in My Rearview Mirror and a whole bunch more. So, Ernie, tell us about Mac Davis.
Well, what I can tell you is I was working in radio in Atlanta, Georgia, back in 1963.
Mm-hmm.
And a good friend of mine that got me in the radio business, Ken Dow, says, you got to meet Mac Davis. And at the time, he was like a local act playing at a roller rink called Misty Waters.
Mm-hmm.
So through Ken, I came to meet Mac and got to know him a little bit, not as much as over the years. But anyway, after I left Atlanta, we kind of lost contact. And the next thing I know, he's in the record business and I'm in the record business. And he's out in LA now cutting records. And I end up down in Muscle Shoals, Alabama, where I spent a lot of time around a lot of great musicians, songwriters, and the famous producer Rick Hall. And I don't know if you're ready for me to go into this story or not, but how that Baby Don't Get Hooked on Me came about.
Yeah, tell us that.
Well, my friends down in Muscle Shoals had many stories to tell, but this is the way they related it to me on several occasions. That Mac comes into town to work with Rick Hall, and Rick says, well, play me some of the songs you got, Mac. He says, let's see what we got that we can go in the studio and start cutting. So Mac plays him some songs, and Rick at the time, of course, he's into songs with hooks. He was big on hooks. And he'd say, well, Mac, he said, I don't really hear anything. We're ready to go in the studio and cut. He said, you need to write me something with some strong hooks, into it. So I like the songs that you hear on the radio and people, after hearing it one time, it just stays in their mind, and they just keep singing it over and over and over.
Yeah, and just for the viewers, a hook on a song, as you said, is a sentence or so or two that immediately people think of when they hear of a song. So that is the hook. Mm-hmm. So Go on. I just wanted to clarify that for those who don't know the radio terminology like we do.
I'm glad you did, which brings to mind regarding Recall. I was music director of a radio station in Little Rock. It was KAJI, and it was called Hi-Fi KJ. But one night I was sitting in my office, and back when we had those little 45 record players with a spindle, you could stack a few records on there, and they would drop down and play or whatever.
Yes,
So I was
indeed.
doing some stuff around the office, and I got in some records that day, and I put them on the spindle and heard, maybe 12 or 13 records. And as I was driving home that night, there was this one song that I heard, and it just so happened later I learned that it was produced by Rick Hall. It was by Arthur Alexander, and the song was called "You Better Move On." And as I'm driving home, this line in that song, it just keeps haunting me, and I keep saying it over. You better move on. You better move on. When I got home, I called the radio station. I told the guy on the air, I said, go in my office, get that record. It's on my desk with a few others, and put it on the air. I said, I really think this is a smash record. And sure enough, it was. But that was, about hooks. But anyway, Rick, talking to Mac, he tells Mac, he says, I got this hospitality trailer out on my ranch. He said, a lot of time my acts will come into town and they don't have enough songs ready for us to go in and cut a whole album with. So I'll put them out there with plenty of booze and steaks and have my Bremer Bulls keep them where they can't leave out there. They won't have a car. We'll drop them off so they can relax and write. And that's what he did with Mac, so I was told. And that he told Mac, says, now you stay out here. When you got a song with a good strong hook to it, you call me and we'll send a writer or somebody to come out and pick you up, bring you back, and we'll check it out. If it's something we think we need to record, then we'll get busy. Well, as I was told again, didn't take but overnight, and the next morning Mac is calling, send the car. I got one for you, damn it. He said, this is a hook to this song I think you're going to like. And when he got there and played it for him, it was Baby, Baby, Don't Get Hooked on Me, which went #1. So I ended up, working that record for Rick, because every time Rick had a record, he would call me and want me to work his records. And I'd also be working the same record for the record label, getting paid twice for it.
Mm-hmm.
The publisher would call you, and you get paid by the publisher. So you're getting paid 3 times, So those were good old days. But anyway, that's how that song came about. And later, Mac, after he was on Columbia, I was in Dallas. I got in the record business. I was doing national sales and promotion for Abnac Records. If you might recall, we had the 5 Americans back then with that Western Union zip code and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Dale Hawkins was a house producer for us there. So got to know Dale. And anyway, Mac comes into town playing Six Flags, of course. And we had a cocktail party and got to hang out with him a little bit there. And then later on, I'm working a radio station out in San Francisco that Jerry Cagle is operations manager of. And every year they would hold a client relationship party with their clients. They'd fly them all to Vegas and treat them to a show and dinner and all that. And they try to get some act that might be performing in Las Vegas to do a free show for the clients. Well, this is what took place. Jerry Cagle calls and said, man, Mac's playing out in Vegas. Said, you think we can get him to do a free show for our clients here at KFRC? I said, well, hell, we'll give him a call and find out, So we get in touch with Mac, and he says, yeah, he says, set it up. I'll do it. So naturally, he did his show there in Vegas that night. And when he got off stage, he went back to his dressing room, rested for a few minutes and took him a shower, got all cleaned up, came back in and did a hell of a show for all the clients there or whatever. So got to hang out with him then or whatever. But after that, I worked, pretty much all of his hit records. And I was never around him on a day-to-day basis, but, as in the record business, you get to hang out with the artists when they come to town, and you got some function you're going to be at and they're there or whatever. But that's about as much as, I knew really about Mac, other than a nice guy, a hell of a songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
Recorded or gave 4 songs that Elvis made popular, that In the Ghetto and what was the other one?
Memories.
Memories. And what was the Daddy song?
Don't Cry Daddy.
Cry Daddy. And what was the other one? My mind's kind of wandering now.
A Little Less Conversation.
Yeah. Anyway, you get a song cut by Elvis, and you don't have to work anymore.
Yeah. Now, those were good songs, man. Elvis did a great version. I'm not sure did Mac ever record them himself, but
I think
yeah.
on the Greatest Hits album he did in the Ghetto. But
Hmm.
I remember I wanted to ask him one time, and I never got around to it. But from what I'd heard over the years, I have to believe it probably was true. But I don't know this for a fact. But just about everybody that wrote a song and Elvis recorded it, Colonel Tom Parker would always want to publish him. And if you remember with Dolly Parton, he calls her up. And Elvis wanted to record that "I Will Always Love You," and of course Dolly was just flattered to hecking back and said, Colonel, he says, I'd love for Mac to cut my, I mean not Mac, but Elvis to cut my song, but says I can't give up to publishing. That's like my baby. I wrote that song, and so she never gave it up, and she hated Elvis didn't record it. But as you know, what's the big artist on Clive Davis had oh gosh, my mind again is wandering. Anyway, had a big hit with it, so she did okay. But I wonder if Mac ever had to give up all his publishing to the 4 songs that Elvis recorded. I'm gonna have to ask around and find out, but I have to believe he probably did. But anyway,
That I will always love you. That would have been a great song if Elvis had done it.
yeah, yeah.
But he left us with a whole lot, that's for sure. Now you have been a more southern states promotion executive, and I'm sure that you worked with a lot of other people besides Mac.
Well, when you say South, whatever, working in Dallas, KLIF was the big radio station, and we had KXOL over in Fort Worth and KFJZ, and Keel over in Shreveport, and all those disc jockeys that you came in contact with, a lot they move around, and you build a relationship with a guy. Next thing you know, he's the PD in Seattle. And I'm working with a guy in Seattle, just like Jerry Cagle ends up in San Francisco. I'm working Jerry, and I had guys like in Salt Lake, just various places around the country. So I was based out of Dallas, but I worked with other markets besides just in the South.
What interesting other artists did you work with besides Mac Davis?
Well, I had opportunity to work closer with a lot of them, but I got to a point to where record companies would call and say, we want to send such and such in town, and want you to, take them around to the radio stations and help promote the record. And a lot of times I said, I really don't want to be the one to take them around. I said, I've been bitten sometimes by some of these artists that, just like yourself, if I had lined up an interview with you, and I was going to bring an artist by the radio station at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'm sitting there with you, and I got no artist. They hang out late at night, and they want to party, and come morning time, it's hard to get them out of the bed. And after a few times doing that, I said, I don't want to hurt my reputation with the radio station. We have to sit there and hem and haw about, well, where is this artist? And I go, well, he drank too much last night, or did too much of whatever, and didn't show up this morning. But I'll tell you this story. Johnny Rivers, he had put out a record on his own label, and I'm trying to think what his label.
Soul City.
Soul City.
Yeah, Fifth Dimension were on there too.
Johnny was a hard little businessman to deal with, and so he put $130,000 into an album he cut himself, and released a cut off of that album. And he had hired another promotion firm that was working the record. And after they had submitted a list to him with about 50 stations that were supposedly playing it, he felt like, well, he needed more stations. So he calls me up and he said, Ernie, I need more ads. Can you help me with this record? And I listened to the record, and I looked at his list of stations he had on the record, and I said, Johnny, you don't need me to work this record. Oh, yeah, I really do. I said, no, you don't. I said, if you got 50 stations, you need to find out if somebody's playing it. If you got 50 stations, somebody ought to be screaming hit by now. Oh, no, I said, no, I don't want to work it. I said, next time you get a record out, just call me. And I said, I can deliver you a half a dozen stations. If I get them to really play it, I can tell you real quick if you got a hit or not, and you don't have to spend a lot of dang money. So as it just so happened, I was out in LA after this other record bombed, and he tracks me down. He had heard I was in town, And he drags me over to some publisher's office and he wants to play me this record, Slow Dancing, Swaying to the Music.
Mm-hmm.
So I listened to that record and I said, well, I can't swear it's a hit, but it sure sounds more commercial or something I wouldn't be, opposed to asking some of my radio friends to play. I said, but if you'll listen to me and not, go and hire a bunch of people and muddy up the water here, I said, I think I can save you a lot of money and a lot of heartache. He said, all right, what do you want me to do? I said, meet me in Houston, Texas. And there was a little market down in your area, Lafayette, Louisiana, that was always good for me. And we rented a car in Houston. We drove to Lafayette. And we went to some stations there. And there was a station out in the mall, KSMB, I believe it was. Mike Mitchell was the PD there. We called on Mike, and Mike, just a sweetheart of a guy. I love him to death. And he said, yeah, Ernie, he says, I'll play this record, man. I said, well, great. So Johnny had brought some stock copies of the record. So there was a record shop right in the mall, Music Land. We could just walk right across the hallway there, and there was a music shop. How convenient. So we go over, and I give the guy 10 free records, and I said, Mike says he's going to play the record, so I want to make sure that you got some stock here. You can't get this record from anybody but me because the record's not out nationally. So the guy says, all right. So we leave Mike, and we end up calling on, I think it was KROF out in Abbeville, and KVOL. What was the guy? Greg, gosh, he was the PD there. Greg, I'm so embarrassed. He's going to want to whoop me. Anyway, he was the PD, and he agreed to play the record. So I get back to Dallas, and Mike Mitchell calls me, because this was on a Friday that I was in Lafayette. He calls me on a Monday. He says, Ernie, he said, the record shop just called me and said, they're out of this record. I said, are you already playing it? Because, most stations don't start playing the record till after they do their playlist on Tuesday and turn all the ads into the trades. So he said, no, I haven't really started playing it yet. But what I did, I put it behind a commercial that I was doing, and I used it for background music until I put the record on officially. He said, but just from hearing it in the background, people were calling the station, want me to play it. And he said, so the guy called me and told me they'd already sold 10 copies. And I said, well, man, maybe I need to start playing this record immediately. So he did. He started playing it. And then the radio station would call up and said, man, we're out of this record. We need some more. So I sent them 10 more. And they'd sell out of that. I said, maybe I better send you more than 10. So I sent them 15, then 20, then 25. And the record really started selling. And me staying on top of the record in the area and all the disc jockeys and keeping them informed what was going on, it went number one at every one of the stations. And got it on so people wouldn't think, well, he's from Baton Rouge, and naturally he's got people down there, they're going to play his record. I said, we need to get it played outside of where you're known, so people, when I call around and say it's a hit record, oh, yeah, well, he's big down there. So I think we got the record played out in Lubbock and Amarillo and over in Longview, Texas, and some places. And sure enough, everywhere we got the record played, it went like number one. So I get a call from Doug Morris, who was then owner and president of Big Tree Records, distributed to Atlantic, and they were a hot little label. They had England Dan, John Ford Coley, and oh God, that had that You Sexy Thing. How I could go on and on with records that they had. David Geddes. And they called, and Doug Morris says, Ernie, he says, I'm seeing this record show up out in areas of the country where you know a lot of people or whatever. He says, this record for real? I said, you bet it's real. He said, really? I said, yeah, that's my record. I'm the one promoting it. He said, then I want it. I said, well, let's talk to Johnny. So I called up Johnny, and I said, Johnny, Big Tree Records wants to pick the record up. Oh, man, I don't want to be on that small little label. I said, you lost your mind. No, man, I don't want to be on that. I said, Johnny, I said, this is a small label. They're not, loaded down with a lot of acts. They can give you the attention that you need and really get behind this record. And then they got the strong arm of Atlantic behind them if they need them. And he thought about it, and he said, oh, man, I don't know. I said, Johnny, trust me. If you sign with a bigger label, by the time the legal work gets done and they get a release date on your record, you're going to be old news, and you might not even get the attention of the promotion you need, and the record could get lost. It's a hit record. Let's don't lose it. So he finally got on the phone with Doug Morris. And back then, Doug would give me 2% of everything that I brought to the label, and for the lifetime of the act on the label. So Doug was negotiating back and forth with Johnny, and he calls me up. He says, Ernie, he said, man, this guy's a tough dude to deal with. He said, he's a hard negotiator. He said, there's no way I can give you 2% and give Johnny, what I'm going to have to give him and really come out on this record. He said, would you take 1%? And then if the record is as big as you claim it is, he said, I'll take care of you on the back end. I said, well, all right, let's go. So they cut a deal and they put the record out. And sure enough, the record went gold, and the rest is history for that or whatever. But that was the story behind my Johnny Rivers days or whatever. And for my royalties from that or whatever, I bought me a 1959 Rolls Royce and had it restored to dang near brand new or whatever. So those were the good days. And,
yep. That's how a hit record is made.
Yeah, and I can tell you another one if you want me to go further.
Go ahead.
I'm sure you know Mike Post. I refer to him as the king of TV themes. He's had more hit TV themes, and the money that this guy makes off of royalties, I'm going to tell you, the Beatles don't even, it's hardly any comparison to the royalties from TV. But anyway, Mike and I became close with a record he had years ago. He comes to Dallas, had a record called Little Dog Heaven. And it was a cute record, real commercial-like, but it didn't really, prove to be that big of a hit. But we got really close, and I really took a liking to Mike. And he had this TV show, Rockford Files. And the TV show was huge, ratings-wise. So Mike had a good friend, Jimmy Bowen, who at the time was president of MGM Country Division out of Nashville. Well, Jimmy back years ago had a label called Amos Records. And Mike used to bug the heck out of Jimmy. He wanted to produce records. He had been, a studio musician, played on Sonny and Cher records and what have you. And so Jimmy Bowen got tired of him pestering him, and he said, all right. He said, here's the deal. I'll put you on a salary of X number of dollars, and you got to bring me a hit record within 1 year, a hit act, or your history. So the first act he brought in was Kenny Rogers in the first edition.
Oh.
So that put them real close. So Jimmy, president of MGM, and Mike calls up Jimmy. He says, I got this record that I cut. That's the theme from the TV show. He said, why don't you sign this record? And he said, Mike, he said, I'll be glad to sign it. He said, but being signed through the country division, you're not going to get much promotion out of it because it needs to be signed out in New York. He said, just sign the record, Jimmy, and let me handle the rest of it. I said, okay. So he signs the record. It gets shipped. And sure enough, not one station added it. It was sitting in trash cans. So Mike calls me up. He says, Ernie, I need your help. I said, what can I do? He said, well, I don't want to go to New York and make a fool out of myself. He said, but I just cannot believe, as commercial as this record sounds, that it couldn't be a hit record. He said, get me a few stations on this record, man, and find out if I'm full of BS or if we need to just forget it and walk away. So here I go back to Lafayette, Louisiana. And we get the record. Wait a minute. When I was talking about, I think I did talk about Mike Post's record being in the background of a record that we put in the shops in Lafayette. Anyway, we proved that to be a hit record. And because I recorded all the tape recordings, talking to the record shops, the radio stations. I had everything documented. So Mike and I fly to New York and we meet with the head of Polydor at the time, which MGM was a part of. And Mike, we walk in the office and I put my little tape recorder on the president's desk and I play all my tape recordings of conversations with radio, record shops, etc. And the president of the label looks over at Mike and he says, rather obvious we've lost a hit record here. He said, what can we do to make it up to you, Mike? And Mike says, well, and he's very blunt. And Mike don't mix words when he's hot. He said, I tell you what you can do for me. He said, you give me and Ernie the money and y'all go back to effing sleep and do what y'all do best. Because y'all lost this record. take a chance of y'all losing it again. We'll hire the people and we'll promote it. Y'all just sit back and please just get it into the stores. And we ended up working that record. It was the instrumental. He became instrumental artist of the year that year. The record ended up top 5, and I want to say it probably could have gone higher. But when we got a few of the bigger stations down at the end of the record, they were late getting records in the stores, so we lost some sales there. But anyway, that was my story with Mike Post, and today we remain the closest of friends. And he flew in here not too long ago in his private jet, and we go up to Clarksdale, Mississippi, to the Blues Museum up there, and he donates some money because he's big into the blues. And on the way back, I got to tell you this story. I'm driving the car, and he leans over and he says, "Ernie," he says, he says, "if you hadn't broke that record, Rocket Files, it led to, he had Hill Street Blues. He had Greatest American Hero, went #1. We had Magnum PI, A-Team, all of that, which I had 2% of everything that he sold on record." And he said, "But with your help or whatever," he says, "that kind of pole vaulted, a lot of success that I've enjoyed." He said, "Last night you picked up the tab for the drinks," and he says, "My brother Bo," he says, "handles my business affairs." And he says, "Wasn't too long ago we had a dinner meeting, and he told me I need to start spending my money because I'm not going to live long enough to spend it all." He said, "So anytime you're in my company, don't reach for your wallet." I said, "You got a deal, buddy."
All right. Well, I tell you what, this has been fun. This has been fun, Ernie. And thank you for your stories on Mac Davis and all this background on how the radio and record business works. And God, let's do this again sometime. The stories are endless.
I say it's a lot of fun, and it's good seeing you again, brother. Stay in touch.
Good seeing you too.